Welcome back to DreamHarbour, Traveler. Tonight, I would like to tell you a story called The Lanterns Along the Quiet Ferry Route. On a long wooden shoreline beyond a calm stretch of water, a row of small lanterns glowed beside a ferry dock. Each lantern rested on a simple post. Each lantern shone with a slightly different warmth. And every evening, as the sky softened into shades of blue and silver, members of a quiet coastal community walked the boardwalk to light them one by one. It was a tradition so old that no one remembered exactly when it had begun. And yet, every season, every year, every evening, the lanterns were lit. I have always liked that story. So come with me for a little while, and let us walk beside the water together. The ferry route itself was not grand. It crossed a peaceful inlet where gentle tides moved between grassy shores and clusters of smooth stones. There were no hurried travelers, no crowded departures, no whistles demanding attention. The ferry simply moved back and forth throughout the day, carrying neighbors, gardeners, musicians, craftspeople, baskets of vegetables, letters, and occasionally visitors who wished to spend an afternoon beside the sea. Its pace never changed, even when clouds drifted overhead, even when summer arrived, even when winter settled quietly across the coast. The ferry moved as steadily as a calm breath. The community that cared for the route lived along both shores. Some lived near the dock. Others lived farther inland where small cottages overlooked meadows filled with wildflowers. Many worked near the water. Some repaired fishing nets. Some built wooden instruments. Some gathered sea herbs along the shoreline. Others simply enjoyed spending their evenings sitting on benches beside the boardwalk and watching the changing colors of the sky. No one owned the lantern tradition. Everyone shared it. That was part of what made it special. Each evening, as sunset approached, people naturally found their way toward the dock. No announcements were needed. No schedule hung on any wall. People simply arrived. A grandmother carrying a basket. A child skipping along the planks. A boat builder brushing sawdust from his sleeves. A musician humming softly. A pair of neighbors discussing tomorrow's weather. One by one they gathered, and one by one the lanterns awoke. The first lantern always stood closest to the water. It reflected gently upon the surface below. The second lantern illuminated a weathered bench. The third shone beside a patch of sea grass that whispered whenever the wind moved through it. Farther along the boardwalk, more lanterns waited. Dozens of them, each with its own place, each with its own view, each becoming part of the evening. The tradition was simple. That was why it endured. No speeches, no ceremonies, no performances, just light, just presence, just neighbors sharing the beginning of night together. During spring, the lanterns glowed beside fresh green grasses. The air carried scents of salt and blossoms. Birds returning from migration rested along the shoreline before continuing their journeys. Children often sat at the end of the dock counting them. Not carefully, not competitively, simply counting for the pleasure of noticing. One bird, then 3, then 7, then losing count entirely and laughing softly. The ferry drifted through these evenings like a patient companion. Its wooden deck creaked gently. Its lantern reflected across rippling water. Sometimes a passenger would remain aboard for an extra crossing simply because the evening felt pleasant. No one seemed to mind. The ferry captain certainly did not. He believed beautiful evenings deserved a little extra appreciation. And there were many beautiful evenings. As spring deepened, small gardens appeared beside cottages throughout the community. People exchanged seedlings, shared watering cans, compared the first flowers opening beneath sunny windows. The lantern route became a place where news traveled naturally. Not important news, not urgent news, the kind of news that settles softly into conversation. A patch of daisies had bloomed. A family of swallows had returned. Someone had repaired an old wind vane. Someone else had baked berry pastries. Little things, comforting things. The lanterns listened to them all. If lanterns can listen, and perhaps they can. After all, objects that remain in one place for many years often seem to gather stories. Summer arrived gradually. The days stretched longer. Golden evenings lingered across the water. The boardwalk became warm beneath bare feet. The ferry carried baskets overflowing with vegetables, bundles of flowers, and occasionally musicians returning from melody fields. Now and then, a melody arrived with them. Nothing elaborate, just a tune. A gentle tune that had drifted through open meadows and traveled all the way to the coast. Someone might hum it while lighting a lantern. Someone else might recognize it. Soon several voices would quietly join. No audience, no performance. Simply neighbors sharing a melody as naturally as sharing sunlight. One summer evening, a letter arrived from the songkeeper. The letter was short. It spoke of blooming flowers, turning windmills, and a new seasonal song that children had begun singing while walking along meadow paths. The letter was read aloud beside the dock, then folded carefully, then tucked away. But the melody described in the letter remained. People hummed it while walking home. They hummed it while preparing supper. They hummed it while lighting lanterns. And before long, it became part of the season itself. The lanterns seemed brighter that summer. Perhaps they truly were. Or perhaps everyone simply noticed them more. Each evening offered its own small beauty. Clouds painted silver by moonlight. Seabirds gliding above quiet water. Reflections trembling gently beneath the dock. The distant rhythm of ferry crossings. The familiar glow of lanterns appearing one by one. People often lingered after the final lantern was lit. Not because there was anything left to do. Because there was nothing left to do. And that felt pleasant. They sat together on benches. Watched stars emerge. Listened to water touching the shore, allowed the day to finish at its own pace. In many places, travelers hurry toward tomorrow. Along the ferry route, people seemed content to arrive fully inside the present evening. That was their gift, and perhaps it is a gift worth borrowing now and then. Late in summer, the community prepared for a beloved tradition called the Evening of Reflections. Once each year, small floating lanterns were placed upon the water, not to commemorate sorrow, not to mark endings, but to appreciate ordinary moments. People wrote simple memories on small pieces of paper. A pleasant walk, a blooming flower, a conversation shared beneath clouds, a favorite meal, the first warm day of spring, a ferry ride enjoyed with a friend. The notes were folded, placed inside lanterns. and carried gently onto the water. When evening arrived, the shoreline glowed. Dozens of floating lights drifted across the inlet, tiny stars moving slowly upon the surface. No one hurried. No one spoke loudly. The community simply watched, memory after memory floating quietly through the darkness. The tide carried them gently. The moon watched from above, and the ferry rested for the night, as though wishing to admire the sight as well. Long after the lanterns disappeared into the distance, people remained seated along the shore. Content: grateful. Still. Eventually autumn approached. Not suddenly, not dramatically. The first signs appeared in small ways. Cooler mornings, longer shadows, golden grasses along the shoreline. The ferry continued its crossings. The lanterns continued their glow. The community continued gathering. Yet everything seemed touched by a softer rhythm. Autumn encouraged observation. People noticed things. The changing angle of sunlight. The migration of birds. The first leaves drifting across paths. The scent of sea air after rain. Even the lantern light seemed gentler, warmer, more thoughtful. One evening, several children asked an elder why the lantern tradition had lasted so long. The elder considered the question carefully, then smiled. "Because every evening arrives," she said, "and every evening deserves a welcome." The children seemed satisfied with that answer, perhaps because it was true. Some traditions survive through effort. Others survive because they belong naturally to everyday life. The lanterns belong to evening itself. As autumn deepened, fog occasionally visited the coast. Soft fog, friendly fog, the kind that blurred distant shapes and encouraged slower footsteps. On foggy evenings, the lantern route became especially beautiful. Each lantern created a small golden circle within the mist. The boardwalk appeared endless. The shoreline faded into silver shadows. The ferry emerged quietly from whitened air and disappeared just as gently. People loved those evenings. Conversations became softer. Movements became slower. The world seemed to shrink into a handful of warm lights and familiar faces. And somehow, that felt enough. One particularly peaceful evening, the ferry crossed the inlet beneath a sky so still that water and clouds seemed almost identical. Passengers sat quietly. No one wished to disturb the calm. The lanterns glowed along the shoreline, waiting, as they always waited. When the ferry arrived, everyone disembarked slowly, not from tiredness, from appreciation. The evening deserved patience. The lanterns deserved noticing. The world deserved gentleness. Winter eventually arrived. It arrived through silver mornings and crisp air. It arrived through scarves, warm soups, and windows glowing softly against early darkness. The ferry continued. The lanterns continued. The tradition continued. Because winter was not an interruption. It was simply another chapter. Snow visited only occasionally. But when it did, the boardwalk became transformed. White drifts rested along railings. The shoreline shimmered beneath moonlight. The lanterns glowed like tiny suns. Children bundled in thick coats walked beside parents and grandparents. Their breath formed little clouds. Their footsteps made soft crunching sounds. The first lantern was lit, then the second, then the third. Soon the entire route glowed against the snowy evening. It was beautiful, beautiful in the quiet way that winter often is. Not dazzling, not dramatic, simply peaceful. The community developed small winter customs around the lantern route. Warm cider shared from insulated flasks. Knitted blankets spread across benches. Stories exchanged while snowflakes drifted downward. Some evenings, musicians carried small instruments and played slow melodies beside the dock. The notes seemed to settle directly into the snow. No applause followed. None was needed. The music existed simply to accompany the evening. And then it faded, like breath upon cold air. During the longest nights of winter, people appreciated the lanterns most of all. The lights created reassurance. A reminder that warmth remained nearby. A reminder that neighbors remained nearby. A reminder that every season belonged, even the quietest one. And winter could be wonderfully quiet. Sometimes the ferry route seemed almost asleep. Water moved gently beneath dark skies. Lanterns reflected in slow ripples. A few late travelers crossed the dock. A few windows glowed in distant cottages. Everything rested. Everything settled. Everything breathed. The months continued. Spring eventually returned. As it always does, the lanterns welcomed it. The ferry welcomed it. The community welcomed it. Flowers appeared once more. Birdsong returned. Days lengthened. And the old tradition continued exactly as before. Not because nothing changed, because enough remained constant. That is one of the comforts of certain places. The world moves. Seasons turn. Years pass. And still a familiar light waits beside the shore. Over time, newcomers joined the community. Children became adults. Adults became elders. Visitors became neighbors. Yet everyone learned the lantern route. Not through instruction, through participation. One evening someone handed them a lantern lighter. Another evening someone invited them to walk the boardwalk. Before long they found themselves arriving naturally at sunset, just like everyone else. The tradition gently welcomed them, and they gently welcomed it in return. Years drifted by. The ferry route remained. The lanterns remained. The shoreline remained. Different voices filled the evenings. Different faces gathered beside the water. Yet the feeling never truly changed. Belonging, that was the heart of it. Not the lanterns themselves. Not even the ferry. Belonging. The feeling that evening would arrive and find a place prepared for it. The feeling that a light would be waiting. The feeling that one did not need to earn a welcome. It was already there. Perhaps that is why I have always remembered this story. There are many remarkable places in the dreaming world. Many beautiful traditions. Many quiet communities. Yet few things feel as comforting as a simple light waiting beside calm water. Now the evening is growing later. The boardwalk has become quieter. The lanterns continue their glow, but fewer footsteps pass among them. The ferry has completed its final crossing. Its deck rests peacefully beside the dock. The water moves with slow and patient rhythms. Above, stars gather across a darkening sky. The benches are nearly empty now. A few neighbors remain. They sit quietly, listening, watching, breathing. The lanterns reflect upon the inlet, each reflection stretching gently across the water. The tide carries those reflections outward, then inward, outward, then inward. Nothing hurries. Nothing asks anything of you. The community sleeps. The cottages rest beneath starlight. The shoreline dreams beside the sea. Even the lanterns seem softer now, their glow growing gentler, their warmth becoming part of the night itself. Far away, perhaps a melody drifts from melody fields, a tune carried by wind across unseen distances. A simple melody, a sleepy melody, one that belongs naturally among lanterns and tides, one that asks for nothing more than listening, and perhaps not even that. The ferry route remains peaceful, the water remains calm, the lights remain steady, the evening remains kind, and beyond the story, DreamHarbour waits as it always has. The harbor lights glow softly. The tide moves gently along familiar shores. Travelers arrive. Travelers rest. Travelers drift toward sleep. I remain here beside the harbor, keeping watch over the stories until they are needed again. Tonight, the lanterns along the quiet ferry route continue shining somewhere beyond the edge of waking thought. The ferry rests. The shoreline rests. The community rests. And you may rest too. The harbor lights are waiting. The tide is moving softly. DreamHarbour remembers you. And I will be here when another evening arrives. Good night, traveler. Good night.